Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to my impressions of the Destiny beta. I'll be honest, I was never all that intrigued by Destiny. While the game's concept interested me initially, the more I saw of the game, the more it started to look like Halo with a fresh coat of paint. But I am happy to say that all changed when I got the chance to play the beta extensively. With its seamless blend of elements from first-person shooters, role-playing games, and MMOs, Destiny managed to make a lasting impression. Destiny begins with a character creation menu, and the first choice I had to make was my Guardian's class. Destiny features 3 classes, the Titan, the Hunter, and the Warlock, which essentially represent the 3 archetypes of a fantasy game: the Warrior, the Rogue, and the Mage. Each class also branches out to various subclasses that can be unlocked as players level up. Based on what I saw in the beta, each class seems to have 3 subclasses in total, although only the starter subclasses were available in the limited beta. After choosing a class, the next phase of the character creation allowed me to customize my Guardian's race, gender, and physical attributes, all of which only serve cosmetic purposes. Unfortunately, this aspect of the character creation left something to be desired due to its paltry selection of hairs and preset faces, but I am hopeful that the final game will feature an expanded customization system, a la Mass Effect or Skyrim. Once I finished customizing my character, I was introduced to the lore of Destiny through an intro cutscene. Destiny's story begins with the arrival of the Traveler, a mysterious entity which brought about a golden age for humanity. With miraculous deeds like tripling human lifespan, along with the vast knowledge and technology that it shared, the Traveler allowed humanity to prosper like never before. But the Traveler had an enemy known as the Darkness, which had been chasing the Traveler for eons across space. Eventually, after centuries of prosperity, the Darkness found the Traveler, and along with it, humanity perished. Now, all that remains of humanity is the last city on Earth, the only place that the Traveler can still protect. With its dying breath, the Traveler deployed ghosts to find special individuals who can harness its power and use it to do what the Traveler no longer can: fight the Darkness. These special individuals became known as Guardians. And that's about all I found out from the beta. I found the story to be pretty vague overall. Don't get me wrong, I think the lore sounds really interesting and has a lot of potential, but even after completing all the missions in the beta, I found that next to nothing was explained, making it difficult to remain invested in the lore. I wasn't expecting the beta to spoil any major plot points or anything, but a little more context would go a long way in making people care about vague and mysterious entities like the Traveler, the Guardians, the Darkness, and the Fallen. Unfortunately, as of now, it's all mumbo-jumbo to me, but keeping in mind that I was only playing a limited beta, I am hopeful that the story will start to pick up in the final game when I get to go beyond the beta. Fortunately, balancing out the beta's weak story was a fun and engaging gameplay, which elegantly mixes elements from various genres. As is expected from Bungie, the first-person shooting mechanics were excellent. I've personally never been very good at twin-stick shooters, being more of a keyboard and mouse kind of gamer, but I felt right at home with Destiny when I played it on the PlayStation 4 after only a few minutes of fiddling with the controls and its handling. The shooting mechanics don't just control immaculately, but they also feel great due to the sense of weight, feedback, and impact that each gun provides, making them incredibly empowering and satisfying to use. Layered on top of Destiny's fantastic gunplay are a variety of RPG elements like a leveling system, but unlike most RPGs, Destiny's leveling system focuses mostly on unlocking skills rather than adding points to stats and attributes. This simple style of leveling, which has become more commonplace in modern RPGs, has always been received with mixed reactions, but I found it to be a perfect fit for a game like Destiny, which is primarily a first-person shooter. As a mostly skill-based game, Destiny's leveling system seems to focus on providing enough options to offer a variety of interesting playstyles, rather than having players worry about statistics and number crunching. In that respect, I found that Destiny's leveling system offered a lot of options. Now, stats aren't completely gone. All Guardians have 3 main attributes: armor, recovery, and agility. You won't be placing points on these or anything, but amongst each class's many skills, a good portion of them are specifically dedicated to increasing these attributes. As for other stats like attack and defense, they are only influenced by the player's equipment, since Destiny doesn't have any attributes like strength, dexterity, endurance, and whatnot to boost. All equipment in Destiny are only restricted by level requirements, so in a sense, you could say that staying up to level with equipment is Destiny's way of boosting your stats. In other words, if your character is level 20, you better get some level 20 equipment, since without traditional RPG stats to boost, you might as well not have leveled up, save for a new skill. It's a system that is elegant and simple enough for just about anyone to understand, and I think it's one that fits the kind of game that Destiny is. Open world exploration is yet another RPG element that has been implemented into Destiny. After completing the tutorial mission, I was given access to a ship, which when taken to outer space, allowed me to choose a planet and location to visit through an intergalactic map. These locations are all self-contained open-world sandboxes, in which players can explore, find loot, encounter enemies, and complete missions, all of which can yield money, items, equipment, and experience points. If I had one way to describe Destiny's exploration system, it would be the offspring of Mass Effect and Borderlands. Using a spaceship and an intergalactic map to travel to planets and locations was all very reminiscent of Mass Effect, while the large self-contained open-world sandboxes definitely reminded me of Borderlands. But one way that Destiny does differ from the two is that every selectable location is associated with one of various game modes. The ones that were in the beta are Tower, Story, Strike, Explore, and Crucible. Tower is only associated with one location, the Tower, a non-hostile area that acts as the game's main hub. Story locations are for main missions. Strike locations are for Destiny's equivalent of dungeons found in MMOs. Explore locations are for free roaming and PvE. And last but not least, Crucible, which is a separate location of its own, is essentially Destiny's competitive multiplayer hub. It all works really well in my experience, and the combination of fun shooting mechanics and satisfying reward system kept me constantly engaged no matter which mode I tried. But I do have one major complaint. The mission structures so far have been extremely repetitive. Every main story mission from the beta essentially bogged down to going from point A to point B, deploying the ghost, listening to some narration, and then either heading over to the next objective marker or dealing with a horde of enemies. As fun as it was to annihilate hordes of enemies, the formula got stale pretty quickly after the first few tries. If all main missions end up having the same structure, I don't foresee the game keeping me hooked for long. Hopefully the rest of the game's missions will be varied and interesting. So far, I have talked about the game's FPS and RPG elements, but what ties everything together are the various MMO elements, although in Destiny, they've been implemented on a smaller scale. For example, the game only features one hub, the Tower, a skyscraper that resides on the last city on Earth. In terms of story, this is where Guardians live, and in terms of gameplay, this is where players gather, interact, buy things, accept bounties, receive quests, and essentially get ready for their next adventure. Another example of smaller scale MMO elements is the smaller number of players at a given location. When players travel to a hostile location, the game will automatically do some matchmaking in the background, pairing them up with only a handful of other players who may have either already been there or who may join in after you. These handful of players inhabiting the same world can either choose to ignore each other and play Destiny like a single-player game, or they can choose to team up and play it like an online multiplayer game. It's all very seamless. Now, because Destiny only drops a handful of players into a sandbox at a time, companionship is a much less common occurrence than in traditional MMOs, so I found myself valuing those infrequent moments when I meet up with other players. This system alone makes the game a thing of its own. Some of the coolest moments in Destiny occur when strangers meet. One player may find themselves in a sticky situation, only to have another player swoop by to help and save the day, and maybe have a little dance party afterwards. Then, knowing they can rely on each other, they can perhaps party up and tackle a few missions together. And oftentimes, these players may never see or remember each other again, which makes these kinds of short-lived friendships all the more memorable. It's a different kind of dynamic from crowded PvEs found in traditional MMOs, one that I personally found myself enjoying. When players aren't cooperating, they will likely be facing each other off in the competitive multiplayer mode known as Crucible. The beta only showcased one mode, Control, in which 2 teams of 6 Guardians must take control of 3 flags scattered around the map while taking each other out. For what it was, I thought it was quite fun. The few maps featured in the beta were all well designed, and using earned skills and powers to take down foes added an interesting twist to what could have otherwise been a standard affair. And for anyone worried that gunplay will be overshadowed by Guardian powers, the long cooldowns for these powers ensure that shooting skills are at the forefront of each match, while rewarding those who can use these powers appropriately during those infrequent moments they become available. I was a bit disappointed that the mode only allowed a maximum of 6 players per team instead of 8, since some of the maps did seem big enough to accommodate for a few more players. Fortunately, there are various other game modes that were not featured in the beta, some of which will likely feature a higher capacity. Something else that I think needs adjusting are vehicles. The beta featured one map which allowed players to use vehicles, and while they are fun and intuitive to drive, I found them to be way overpowered, especially one vehicle in particular called the Interceptor. The match would basically bog down to who can take control of the Interceptor and destroy the opponents, and that player would pretty much dominate the match. In matches where I would otherwise have difficulty building up kill streaks, I found myself going on a 10 kill streak with ridiculous ease, and having been on the other side, I know how frustrating it can be to hear the sound of the vehicle approaching, knowing that in a few seconds I'll be dead and there's nothing I can do about it. But these minor complaints aside, I found myself having a blast with Crucible, which is a good sign considering I was only playing a limited beta. I know I've spewed a lot of criticism for someone who claims that the beta has ignited his interest in Destiny, but if anything, it's a sign that I've grown fond of the game, like a parent scolding his child out of love and not out of spite. I really want this game to be good. It has so much potential. Overall, thanks to the game's fantastic layering of FPS, RPG, and MMO elements, I was left impressed and excited. At the same time, this newfound fondness has instilled a steep fear that the game may not grow up to its full potential. The story was severely lacking throughout the limited beta, the mission structure left a lot to be desired, and it's hard to say how much content the game will feature. But with all said and done, I have decided to believe in Destiny. As a result of the beta, I was finally convinced to place my pre-order. Now all I can do is wait and hope that Bungie's ambitious new game is destined for greatness. That is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on Destiny, be sure to join the nation and subscribe to Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out.